Good day, it's Tuesday, the 29th of October, 2019. This is the second video for the day. This is Tim Gillio, the rest of the story. This video, I'm doing it because I was asked by Brent. We're going to eventually get around to a version of it, but Brent is the administrator, the one who does the marketing of these videos so that you people can get them. So he's doing a good job. Give him a thumbs up. You know, he's trying hard. He's like the rest of us. He's starving and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. I mean, that's a normal thing here in the West nowadays. But we live in the heart of the oil and gas industry in the northeast BC, so we're not the only ones. You know, as long as we can keep people from putting nooses around their necks or guns in their mouths, we're doing okay. So let's give them something else to do. So just this subject that I've been asked to talk about separation. So that's probably what we're going to give them something else to do. So separation can represent two things. It can represent hope for some people when all hope's lost. I mean, our last election was really a hope election from a lot of people out here, and that hope, of course, was dashed by the results. The other thing is it could represent a total destruction in one's life. So it depends on how we get to it. I think with the question that the reason Brent's asked me to do this is because people kept asking him if I would do one. So I do have a little bit of history. I mean, I've been around long enough that I've seen the conflicts around the world. I've seen what's happened to them, and I kind of have a little bit of an idea what will transpire here. So I think what people I don't think are so afraid of being shot. They're more concerned about starving to death, or freezing to death, or these other things that are a little bit more immediate and more into people's lives than getting shot. And statistically, it proves that out. If you start looking at Yugoslavia, for instance, Yugoslavia was in a way kind of similar to what Canada is. So we're going to get into that one. We look at wars like Chechnya. The people themselves, the civilians always suffer the most. Regardless, they're going to suffer the most. Generally, civilians, believe it or not, in more populous areas, the larger cities are going to suffer more so than the people out in the more rural areas. Only because rural areas there's not a whole lot there. But the certain things that rural areas have over populous areas like cities, like urban areas, is that if the power goes out here, if there's no authority any longer, we have enough people that have the skills to pay the bills that can go and figure out how to hook the power up. The power from the dam's still going to flow. These other things are still going to happen. So the same thing with the gas. Is anybody going to get paid? There's going to be nobody to pay. The thing about separation, people say, what am I going to do with my mortgage? What mortgage? As soon as you get into a conflict like separation, and here's how separation starts. Let's back it up a little bit to how it's going to start before how it affects you. So we look at Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia was a nation that in 1945, they really designed the nation. The basic monarchy structure, they abolished the monarchy in 1945 at the end of the war. So once they abolished the monarchy, they created a republic, or basically a socialist republic, in other words, a communist/republic. So that communist-based system was fine, it stayed in power until 1980. They didn't have an issue with it. The reason they didn't have an issue is they had one leader, a guy by the name of Tito. So Tito was a very strong leader, and he kept basically Yugoslavia together. He didn't worry about he managed to calm any ethnic instability while he was still alive. Tito died in 1980. Of course, the politics that happened next were there's political clashes, and people started to use division amongst the areas that gained political control. Sort of like what we see today with Trudeau. The politics of division has been around for a long time. The problem with the politics of division is that they cause real harm. Right? Politics of unification have a hard time reunifying something after you've had a leader like Trudeau that's gone around for so many years dividing the nation and causing great harm to specific areas. So when this happens, they start to take advantage. In this case, you had several ethnic groups. So it wasn't just a conflict of, say, the West versus East, or what we refer to as in the U.S. Civil War, where it was North versus South. We're going to get it. We'll describe a little bit of that, so we can make a little comparison there too, because that's, I think, people's biggest fear is we're going to end up like the U.S. Civil War. Where 10 billion of us are all going to die and blah blah blah. So I don't think that's going to happen, but think we're going to probably be a little closer to the Yugoslavia type conflict. I mean, we look at different conflicts. The Chechen War, I mean, Ottawa and the Laurentian elite, which is the Laurentian Valley and Ottawa valleys, or the southern Ontario and Quebec, southern Quebec. They don't want to lose the gravy train, which is the West, and most definitely New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland, the Maritime provinces. Without those transfer payments, are pretty much sunk, especially if we apply the debt portion of Canada's debt to the east and say, well, you've already received the rest in transfer payments or our equal debt, which they have, and I can guarantee you, I don't know anybody personally that's going to say, no, yeah, we're going to take some of the debt. No, it's going to be yours. But there is something in place, and we'll get into that to make that go away too. So we're sitting here with, we'll use Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had six semi-autonomous regions, or basically provinces. So when they say semi-autonomous, Canada, although we sit as a nation, right? That depends on a constitution that's never been ratified. We've had two accords to try to ratify, the Charlottetown and the Meech Lake Accord. Neither one of them completed because they couldn't get Quebec's signature. Quebec not signing it in reality has made the federal government, a de facto government, because in 1934 the government was given the leave from the monarchy system by the Westminster Parliament in the UK, which gave all of us colonists the right to self-determination. The problem is our Laurentian elite said, we don't need to do that, we're happy with the way it is, so we'll just carry it on and never put the vote to the people. So we've been running around ever since, and that was the attempt by Trudeau, and then again by Mulroney. The whole idea behind that attempt was to try to create a constitution that was reality as to basically create a nation. Otherwise, we continue to run as a de facto strong-arm nation, where the individuals that control the police and control the military, which are who we elect every 4 years and become slowly more dictatorial as they go along to continue to grab up more and more powers. So other than that, Canada actually runs under the Dominion Act still, right? The 1857 BNA and British North American Act, but which was replaced later with the Dominion Act. The Dominion Act vests the power of the provinces inside the provinces themselves, so it doesn't vest it in Ottawa. Ottawa's trying everything it can under its power to try to cede the power, right, or get the provinces to cede the power to Ottawa. So that's where we're kind of sitting. I mean, no matter how much I dislike Quebec is actually, in the case of separation in Canada, should prevent us from having an all-out civil war, because we already have legislation, we have the legal framework to separate, which was in 1995. Has been muddied a little bit. I mean, the Harper government did muddy a little bit, but the Fair Question Act is a result of a 1995 referendum in Quebec. So we look at that in Canada. Is it going to be a peaceful separation? Absolutely not. I mean, that's what we call soliloquy. That's hoping, dreaming. The reason being is because it's never going to happen. I mean, the East is not going to cede the gravy train to the West. I mean, all of a sudden we're going to become the fifth largest economy in the world with damn near no people and no debt, because the East is going to have to take the debt. They've already taken the money from the West. West has paid the debt. So that's not going to be something that's I don't see it going quite that swimmingly, let's say. But what I do see is probably something closer along the lines of Yugoslavia. So in Yugoslavia, after Tito, you ended up with divisive governments that were dividing their nation based on ethnic or political affiliation. So we have that going on now in Canada. I mean, we see Trudeau's been doing that now for 4 years, and he continues to do it. So the same attitudes that were pervasive in Yugoslavia prior to the start of their conflict, was the 10-year conflict, 91 to 2001. It was a little different, but what else was different in the former Yugoslavia is you had these nations, Slovenia and Croatia, which were basically Catholic in origin. They were wealthier nations. They were the Alberta of their, the Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northeast BC of their time there, and when it dealt with mining. Then you had Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was the heart of the country. They had Sarajevo, which was at the time was the capital. They managed to retain that, but that was after several conflicts. You had a portion of Bosnia and Herzegovina which wanted to split off and be retained by Croatia. So that's when you started having people moving from side to side, and east to west, north to south, to try to stay with their ethnicities. Below that, you had basically the Orthodox religious sectors, which were Montenegro, Serbia again, which is part of Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and Macedonia. Bosnia and Herzegovina and parts of Serbia were against the Serbia conflict was based on a split between ethnicities, right, Muslim versus non-Muslim. That conflict. So there was two reasons for the inner fighting. Not only did you have political divides, you had economic divides. Well, three. Then of course, you had your ethnic divides. So Yugoslavia wasn't a simple split up. Yugoslavia is, we'll say the head of Ottawa is we'll say Canada's Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia was splitting into Quebec was one place. Once it started in the north in Croatia, in Slovenia and Croatia. And the reason it started up there is you had an elected official got in who to try to fix the economic divide and the upstart separatist movement. He decided that he would put sanctions against the industries in Slovenia and Croatia, which were basically the breadbasket of the nation. So I mean, you kind of see what's going on here. We're seeing the same thing. History has a tendency to repeat itself. It's just really stupid people don't know anything about history. And unfortunately, people running our country are either really stupid, or they're evil geniuses, and they're trying to force us into the arms of America and create this one great big North America asset. I think what's going to happen is they're going to divide this into a lot of countries, which I think it should have been anyhow. Canada as a nation is always really been a relative joke, because we don't really have a whole lot in common with each other. The 2010 Olympics, when we won gold, that was special, right? Not much has happened since. It's been a country of division ever since. So we start looking at what we're going to do. If we look at the similarities in Yugoslavia, what happened to the people? Well, the first thing that happens by the time Clinton got into power, then he used his authority and his power to drag in UN forces or NATO forces to bust up the conflicts the best they could. I mean, Canada, of course, is well known for a couple of battles they fought without bullets, because that's our geniuses. Let's go to war. You can have a gun, you can't have any bullets. So before you shoot any soldiers as they come at you, ask them if they have any bullets for those guns. And you don't want to shoot innocent people. Yeah, I know, that's a bad joke. But so here we are. I mean, I got to know quite a few people that were, Canadian soldiers that were in that conflict. A lot of them have some mental distress because of what they witnessed over there. So you do have a certain portion of the population when you're dealing with ethnic stuff. So it'd be like, okay, within our ethnic communities, say in, I don't know, we'll pick one. Let's say there's a town over here that's full of Muslims, and over here you have a town full of Christians. And the Christians and the Muslims go at each other, then they start hacking each other to bits, and these aren't technically the militia. These are the soldiers. These are just civilians. So then you end up with a bloody mess. But that's what kind of the ethnic portion of it did. There are wars seen 50, 60,000 civilians die. There's no real number depending on what area or who's coming up with the numbers. They're still finding mass graves over there. If you look at Chechnya, where of course Chechnya almost brought the world to a war against Russia, not once but twice. So again, that was in the Chechen wars from 91 to 94, then again in 99 and 2001. So when you looked at those conflicts, it was an overwhelming force that we're separating, and then they just rolled the tanks through the streets, and the politicians that caused it all buggered off, and most of the deaths were civilians. So that's kind of an anticipation. Whereas the Yugoslav war. Canada doesn't really have a military strong enough, and I doubt they're going to get a military that react in favor of anything they want. Because when you're looking at the type of the Yugoslav type of conflict, what's going to happen is you're going to have militias form up. So say where I live here in Dawson Creek, Dawson Creek has a militia. Well, there's Fort St. John's 45 miles away, Chetwynd's 60, Tumbler Ridge is 75, Grand Prairie is 90. Grand Prairie is the largest center up here. So then over the mountains, but again, now you have mountains and you have geography now you have to take into consideration. So in our certain area, if one place has a militia and the other ones start to form up militias, it makes sense at some point to take on the government for these militias to join forces. So those militias start to join forces, you end up with a larger militias, right? And as they join forces, they create more militias and they continue to join forces, and then you start to push against the authority that's coming against you. So that's how your separation starts. The second thing that happens is that for a little while, money, as we understand money, continues to operate. Nobody within running these militias is going to be stupid enough to interfere with too much transport. I mean, they might set up roadblocks and checkpoints, but they're not going to interfere with too much transport, because the transport of goods is important. But after a certain point, if you're going to separate from a nation, you can't use their money. So on the world, we have a thing called world currency, right, or world money, trade dollars. In this case, it's U.S. dollars, the primary trade dollar. So as long as we separate before something like the centralized bank or the Federal Reserve Bank fails, or the UN is put out of business, which I mean they're actual realities right now that that both those things could happen within a matter of a year or two. So right about the same time Canada's folding, we'd have a nation to the south of us that basically taking the wheels off the United Nations, and if they shut down their Federal Reserve Bank, then we end up with no trade dollars. So basically, we're going to be scrambling to use whatever the U.S. is using for currency, because any of our goods that we're going to need are going to come out of the U.S. Farmers and people that buy and supply things are going to have to take less money for their stuff. There'll be a lot of trade. There'll be a lot of barter going on. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't. It's one of these times that, depending on where you're living, if you're living in what we'll call a federalist area, where it's controlled by the federal government, the current government, or the provincial governments, and that's the second thing that fails, is as you're going through these conflicts and they grow and they become bigger and bigger and bigger, government fails. I mean, there's no government instead of being a house for debate, becomes for a short period of time a military opposition, and then from there it completely folds. Bureaucracy kind of folds. You generally rely on your doctors, nurses, your medical staff to live up to the Hippocratic Oath and continue to look after the population. And most of them would, because they got nowhere else, nothing else to do. So it's kind of, that becomes a point where people start, the doctor goes back to getting paid in chickens. That's so I mean, if you haven't got some chickens, you might want to get some chickens. Probably a good idea. So that's kind of where we're going to get at with the money and that type of situation. If the UN's still around, if not, you're going to look at aid. You're not going to get any aid from anywhere in the world other than most likely, if we're lucky, we'll get some aid from the United States. We're a little luckier in the West is because of the Alcan Highway that I live by, or the Alaska Highway, because it's there, and the Americans have the right to protect it and protect their nation's citizens as they travel to and fro from Alaska. So that basically cuts down the heart of Alberta as the major route. We're going to have small interim conflicts in places, say like maybe even downtown Edmonton. There's going to be sections of Edmonton aren't going to want to go along. I had a suggestion that it's kind of just me being funny, but one of my suggestions, we build a wall right around Manitoba, and all the liberals and progressives we find, we throw them over the wall. But the reality is that places like Vancouver, Victoria, Victoria's not going to want to cede power, so they're going to try the best they can. They're going to try to use the RCMP. The RCMP, most of them, the ones that are regional or localized, if they have family up here or in whatever area they're in, they're probably going to side with the militias as the militias get stronger, because the alternative is, of course, get killed, and they're not going to want to get killed. So the government will start pulling itself back, right? How many people are going to die? We're probably looking at 40,000-50,000 people that'll be you know, militarily killed, and probably maybe 100, 200,000 people that'll die from, civilians that'll die. That seems, when you're looking at Yugoslavia, looking at the conflicts there, to be able to be reasonable. But what I think is going to happen is the government won't be able, the federal government's not going to be able to come in and enforce their rule upon us as a as a nation, because once the West starts to succeed, starts to break up, you're going to have Quebec is going to look at their interest, and the Maritimes start looking at their interest, and these will all come within from political factions within the parties that exist today, and in most of these cases, spurred on by as soon as militias start to form, they no longer have there's no options any longer. So that's what people understand. As soon as you start forming up these militias, the government is not going to like it, but as soon as you start forming them up, the government's going to do everything they can to take you down. So you have the whatever they call the 3%, the 111 guys. You have a bunch of these other guys that have slowly been forming up over the years, and there are organizations that a guy can go to if you believe in those organizations. Things like Exit, like Wexit as we have today, they're starting to focus on being political parties, where this is not going to be this is not going to be political in nature. It's not how these seldom work as politically in nature. If you look at history, you require a lot of angry and annoyed and pissed off citizens, and we seem to have that going for us right now. A lot of people that have been hurt, and the division from centralized power seems to be happening. A lot of mistrust in government, which is equal right now, and the judiciary. I mean, the situations are ripe for separation to happen. Are we going to be able to pull back from it? I'm not sure we're going to be able to pull back from it. And at the same time, I'm not sure if I want to. It's I'm seeing a whole system is broken. It doesn't matter if you're in the east, west, north, south. If you're in the Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, Quebec, Newfoundland, we have a political system that's broken, right? I mean, the only time everybody's nice to you when they want your vote, but after that, our political system is totally corrupt. We're run by corporations, right? We're not run by the rights of the citizens don't exist. The bureaucrats have taken over, right? So we have these unelected bureaucrats, or these union leaders that dictate how things go. At one time, because of the great packages that went along with working for government, they got paid less, but they had better retirement packages and better packages because they're guaranteed by us the people. Now they get paid more. It's a position where I was saying earlier, we'll start teaching people how to earlier video. We'll start teaching people how to recognize who can be trusted and who can't be trusted, because even inside these organizations, there's people that are trustworthy inside of these bureaucracies. But a lot of times they're not. So I mean, you have to look at when you look at your influence, and you're dealing with these people. How do they respond to the law? Do they somebody above them say this is how it's going to be, and that's regardless of what the law actually says, and then they abdicate that this person, or there's somebody up here dictating this person to collude with them, then forcing these people below them to abdicate and obfuscate. And if they are, and these people are going along with it, or then basically. How do you trust somebody that's willing to, those people can't be trusted, right? If you want to go along with something, you ain't got enough intestinal fortitude to stand up. I mean, you might lose your job. Guess what? In the old days we had wrongful dismissal. Today we don't have that anymore, of course, because we have a system that's totally broke. So I mean, I think I'm really at the point where I do believe that civil war is probably the best thing to happen for Canada. It'll bust it all up, and we're looking at the U.S. struggling to try to get their swamp and their deep state under control. So I mean, you have obvious criminals down there, and mock media or fake media that's become a joke for anybody that's actually paying attention to anything. So here you have crimes getting committed. We're still waiting. Hopefully, before long, the current American administration will take these people and make them pay for the crimes that they committed. That would be interesting. So if that happens, then I think we have a whole other world ahead of us. Then we'll see what happens here in Canada, because they do have a lot of those sealed indictments, and I don't think anything's going to happen until those indictments start to become unsealed. So it may be just a matter of a few more months of pain, or another year or two of pain. But by that time, if Canada doesn't follow suit, I mean, our bureaucracy's got to be changed out. Our political system's got to be changed out. Our judicial system's got to be changed out. And the best way to change those people out is create new countries. Because for a period of time, there's no need for politics. Politics is done on the spot. There's diplomacy, honesty, morality, and integrity. And if you have a leader in an area that doesn't possess those things, hopefully the people that do possess those things quickly eliminate them. It's not like somebody's going to come up and charge you for shooting them in the head, and that's kind of where we're probably going to end up. So that's my take on it. I mean, as far as how the general population is going to go, who are you going to pay your mortgage to? Nobody's going to be nobody to pay your mortgage to. There's really going to be no government. You're going to have some people that'll be de facto police. The police will try to maintain some form of civility. Most of those will be citizens that will run around and try to look after people, which is a good idea. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to get really greedy, because that's it's common, right? So those people, I mean, greed is what got us into this problem with our political, bureaucratic, and judicial system. So hopefully those people are quickly eliminated. That's a good way to get back to some form of morality. Yeah, and that's kind of what we need. If we don't get back to right is right and wrong is wrong, and if we keep dealing with this right is wrong and wrong is right, then there's no use changing anything, right? So I mean, that's really what annoys people the most. That's the biggest division. We're going to have a little bit of conflict probably around Vancouver. I mean, most of these people are going to try to flee. Where are they going to flee to? I'm not quite sure. I mean, if the U.S. gets their house in order, but before this happens, so we don't have any real major offenses start until next spring, which is what probably the earliest anything's going to start. So if something were to start and it happened in the spring, and we had another disastrous winter, and so that really gives Trudeau, if he's got a brain cell, it gives him, he better get together with his provinces and say, okay, let's throw a ton of money back into Alberta here real quick, and we'll go back to creating Petro-Canada again, and this time we'll hire everybody, get everybody back to work. So he's got to fight on either side of it. Doesn't matter. We discussed how the reason the pipelines of Tidewater are having problems. I mean, I discussed that in the last video and the video before. We discussed that quite often because it has to do with what my business kind of specializes in. So I have a very good grasp of exactly how these foreign influences and why they want to keep our oil landlocked. Right, the environmentalist groups, the ones that have a brain, are getting paid. The ones that are sheep are just doing it for free. It's kind of cool, right? I mean, hey, I got laundry. If somebody wants to come do my laundry for free, you know what I'm saying? I could always use a few sheep myself. So that's kind of where we're at. Hopefully, I mean, we could there's another solution, and we can find a way around it. But if we don't, it's nothing to fear. I mean, it's fear that'll eat you up, right? So I mean, try not to fear. Try to just take it a day at a time, and do the best you can. And when it comes down, I mean, like I said, in some ways it's a good thing. As soon as the banks can no longer exist, where are the banks from? We're in the West. Where are the banks from? Oh, I second I call Nova Scotia. That'd be in Nova Scotia. Bank of Montreal. That'd be in Montreal. Royal Bank. That's in Ontario. We keep going down. There are no, we have some credit unions here. We have no real Western banks. So basically, the credit unions are going to take over. They're localized. So I mean, it's certain things will work out, in the end. But again, who are you going to pay your mortgage to? Who's going to come and repossess your land? Nobody. I mean, chances are that for a while the commerce between the East and the West will dissolve. If you look at Yugoslavia today, modern day Yugoslavia, they're pretty much at peace. Right? That'll happen over time. Right? Probably a lot sooner than we think in Canada. I mean, we are pretty much autonomous regions already. So outside the certain conflicts, right? I mean, what do I see? I see maybe Vancouver Island. They've had a separatist movement that's been, a grassroots movement there for probably 30, 40 years, if not longer. I see them trying. They may, depends on what they want to enact for policies, right? So I mean, if all of a sudden Vancouver Island wants to separate, and they decide we want to be greenies, and they're gonna ban all shipping in all waters around the world, well, then it's then we we can borrow nuclear bombs and they'd probably get paid a ton of money to dispose of them right there. No joking aside, by the way. So that's Vancouver itself. Vancouver is going to suffer. It's going to suffer really bad. There's, once you start taking away the food supply, what people don't understand about agriculture and how agriculture works. Agriculture is based on, originally cities only grew, or towns only grew to the size of the farm around them to support the town. You were supported regionally. But this globalization we've had, where I live, we have beef, which is good to eat. I like beef. We got a lot of canola, which not very good to eat. You make oil out of it, but that's kind of, we got to get back to mixed farming and more family oriented farms. So that's the globalization and the new world order has kind of destroyed those. They've done it on purpose. That way they can control the food supply. Food supply relies on transportation. So if you're into this heavy environmentalist movement, you should maybe pay attention, because you're not thinking every time you go to the grocery store, where'd that come from? Well, it had to come a long ways away to get onto your plate. It cost a lot of energy, created a lot of carbon. So that's kind of what we've lost. So if you're in the Lower Mainland, it's impossible to support that population on blueberries, and that seems to be their biggest export market down there is blueberries. So I like blueberries. I just can't see a steady diet of them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I don't know how long you live on them. They have a little bit of dairy out in Abbotsford, that type of thing. Like, all the grove in those areas, a little bit of cattle. It's not going to take long for that couple million people to burn through every cow that's down there. So how that's going to work out for them, I'm not quite sure. You can pretty much estimate that there's 50% or more of the population is actually fairly conservative, and they're probably going to want to once the shit hits the fan, they're probably going to join up their own militias, and let's just say the lunatics on the left are going to they're going to have a interesting time. I don't see them surviving with much power. The greenies, I think I don't know how well they're going to do off in their private little estates. So we'll have to see what happens, but that's kind of where we're at. There's going to be conflicts in those regional areas. Again, you're going to have Quebec trying to separate at the same time. You're going to have portions of Newfoundland and Newfoundland and the Maritimes. So some of them will try to separate, some of them will try to join each other. So we could very well end up with 5 or 6 different areas in Canada. Now the Indigenous question is something that somebody was asking me the other day, and now if you look at the Indigenous question, it's not a question any longer. So the Indigenous groups, the Indigenous leaders might want to maintain their power just like any other political party, any other political affiliation, political organization. So you might have some small bands that are going to create dissension, where you're going to have some more conflicts there, and those are because of the size of them. Really, by the time somebody has time to go out and deal with them, they'll probably be wiped out fairly quickly. And that's a sad thing to say, but most of them would say the nice thing about creating a new nation is we can get rid of this philosophy of division. The Liberals brought in the divisiveness. They've run the nation for the majority of Canada's history. So it's ironic that we have a Liberal leader, particularly the one whose father was started us down this debt cycle that we're on when he sold us into the Bank of International Settlement and created our, now we have our own money that by law in 1938, the Canadian Banking Act prohibits any entity other than the Canadian Bank itself, the People's Bank, from printing money in coin. So the fact that we allow a privately owned, run Rothschild Central Bank to print our money and charge us interest is a digital keystroke. We pay a ton of money for a digital keystroke. Nobody actually ever really prints anything. The printing it is done is paid for us, for me and you, the Canadians. So it's just another scam. We got to get rid of these worldwide scams of these elites. And I feel sorry if we end up with, hangings in the public square. Hell no. Right? As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that Trudeau is probably so angry at Alberta is that his great uncle was hung in Alberta for being a horse thief. So, that's a mem. Hopefully it's real. If not, it's a good story anyhow. So it'd give him a good reason to be a little bit annoyed at Alberta. You hung me uncle. Well, he could be next. We don't know. We're going to find out. Hopefully this puts some of your fears to bed. Basically, life will go on. We'll always find a way. And when it's all done and said, I'm pretty sure life will be a hell of a lot better than it is now. So you guys have a wonderful day. This is a really long video, and it's almost past my bedtime. See you later.